information that we would need to bring to the city council the same way that your staff would need to bring to you. We are ready to develop the lease purchase agreement that is talked about in the option. And we're ready to draft that in accordance with the general terms that are laid out in the option. We may need a month or two extension should the Board of Commissioners be willing to grant that. Our understanding is that this option expires on the 1st of November, 2021. That is, 5 weeks or so away. And given the detail that we need to get right collectively on the LPA, we'd welcome your indulgence to ask for a 2-month extension. And we also understand that you all are embarking on a drop-off center strategic planning process, which may change your interest in developing a drop-off center here, which is fine. We're two partners working through a very complex situation, but we're confident on the city side that the time that you'll need to talk through your strategic planning will also get us much closer to bidding, which I think will help both parties. So there's always information on the Champlain Parkway website. As you'll see under the latest news tab on the homepage is that the environmental document is available, and that we're trying to be as transparent as we can be on what the next steps are here. This is the information on the Parkway project and the contact information. I spent many of my years trying to fight the project to have it be a better fit for the Burlington community prior to my position at Public Works. I don't say this lightly, but we've brought this project to 3 months till bidding, and this project's never been in a better spot. I wish after 2 years I'd say it was under construction. I can't say that right now, but this is a materially different place than it's been before. So thanks for your indulgence for 10 minutes. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chapin. Are there any commissioners who would like to voice an opinion or ask a question? Paul Stabler.
Yeah, Chapin. Hey, thanks. This is seems like great progress. That's really great to hear. My question is, have you guys been having or had in the past, discussions at the Flint Avenue community level regarding the the placement of a drop-off center there? And, is the community generally supportive, or do you anticipate pushback on that?
Right. There needs to be work with the community. There have been periodic references to this. There has not been a deep dive in the South End recently. In a perfect world, we would be further ahead with the Parkway project that would give us kind of a springboard. That said, we are planning to start the engagement. We're going to the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee of the City Council next Tuesday. We are briefing the city councilors. This is a public meeting here. We are happy to answer any questions with the public, and will be, wanting to walk hand in hand with you all about this. Let's be honest, until the Champlain Parkway is constructed, there will be concerns about traffic between the drop-off center and the highway system. I think one of the important points is there has been a drop-off center here in the South End that has had to go through residential neighborhoods to get to the highway system. Your staff has informed me that the number of trucks that would access the drop-off center would not change materially. And so I think we have some interim answers that aren't perfect, but they're good. And the long-term answer is a great one, that the Champlain Parkway provides direct on and off access to the drop-off center without any proximity to residential properties. And that's a game changer. We want to be a partner in your success. We're going to do this. We're ready to start negotiating the LPA. I think fundamentally, your options to give us 5 years were really beneficial. We've contributed $83,000 to you as a good faith effort of that 5-year indulgence, but it's time for us both to bring this to conclusion and move forward.
Thank you, Chapin.
Bryn, you have your hand up.
Hi, thanks for the presentation and update, Chapin. I'm wondering I'm not that well versed on Act 250 considerations. I'm wondering, I know it plays into our drop-off center hours and flexibility for other locations. I'm wondering, due to the location, if that would allow more flexibility or less flexibility for our hours of operation, if there's any sense for that. And then I guess I'll leave it at that for now. I have a couple other questions.
Sure. I'll be short-winded and say that the Parkway certainly has been a project that's required Act 250 approval. And it does have a permit for that project. Yes, the Parkway does have an Act 250 permit. In working with you all, we would need to get a development review board permit locally, and potentially, I'm not sure, depending on the size and scale, whether we need Act 250 approval. But what I will say is that once the Parkway is constructed, there will be a much greater support in the community for the conversation of expanded hours, expanded services, just given the easy on and off without impacting residential communities, that our community will be more receptive.
Other commissioners have questions? I know, Bryn, you do have some additional questions, but I want to give other commissioners a chance to ask any questions that they might have. I'll take, I have a couple of questions. One, I'll just put out there and then turn it back over to you, Bryn. Just for clarification, I think, Chapin, you've asked for, or indicated some sort of short-term extension of the MOU that expires, I think you said on November 1st, if I recall. And our drop-off center retreat is the day before on October 30th. A week earlier than that is our regular October board meeting. So just juggling all those dates. Sarah, I guess I'm just putting it out there. Most likely in October, you'd be asking us to entertain a short-term extension, probably with the same terms that the current extension exists under, to allow us to discern our future. Is that
right.
more or less correct?
Yeah.
And I'm asking that question really on the behalf of all the commissioners to understand how this process would move forward.
Correct.
Thanks. Bryn, another question?
Yeah, I guess there's so many projects that are kind of building on each other. Would it be the desire or anticipation for this to be, I guess, what I would characterize as a full service drop-off center? Or would we continue to provide the services that we're currently providing in Burlington?
Right. Currently, it's only organics. The desire is to return back to the range of services that were provided previously at 339 Pine Street. There does need to be ongoing community conversation that we would welcome to do with you as we progress here together. But I think the community has expressed to us certainly that just providing a limited range creates more driving. People have to go to Burlington and then out to South Burlington or Essex, and it's just easier to have a one-stop shop.
I'll jump in then with another question unless another commissioner has any question they'd like to ask. My second question is, or observation is also, I believe, Sarah, that ultimately our decision to build a drop-off center on the Flynn Avenue property is dependent on what the decision is by the city of Burlington with their potential consolidated collection. Unless that has been resolved,
It's not contingent. I actually thought you were going in a different direction. I thought you were going to say it's contingent upon our ability to obtain the permits, and that is true. But I do think the consolidated collection conversation in Burlington will be a factor, or should be a factor in the conversation about what range of services we would be able to provide or want to provide in Burlington, kind of getting to Bryn's question. As Chip mentioned, currently it's extremely limited service just to food scraps and organics. If there were consolidated collection, then we would want to factor that in and say, well, you know, what are the gaps in service? What does it make sense for CSWD to provide? I know that the studies that have been done for the city, and Chittenden, you can speak much more clearly to this, have indicated that a certain amount of residents would still want to utilize a drop-off center. They still want to have an opt-out option if the city were to implement consolidated collection, whether the city ran it or whether it was franchised out. So there is still some level of, at least in the surveys done by GBB, by the city's contractor consultant, there is some level of desire expressed to have a drop-off option. So, Chip, I don't know if you want to add more. We've been having more conversations about that for sure.
Yes, we've not only did GBB get that information that there was general interest in an opt-out. What we've been hearing through a survey that we've been running with over 400 responses is that there is 15 to 25% of our population who currently self-hauls, who enjoys the flexibility of that, who enjoys the cost savings of that. And I would be highly surprised if what comes out of our consolidated collection conversation, if it advances, would be something, anything but offering an opt-out provision. So I fully expect opt-out to be there, to have a significant number of our populace wanting to use it. The second point I'd make is that in my mind, we are a region and we need to start thinking, continue to think like a region. And I know CSWD does that more often than many. Drop-off centers are not in every community in Chittenden County. South Burlington really has South Burlington and East South Burlington. And Shelburne doesn't have a drop-off center to my knowledge. South Burlington does not either. Many people in Winooski work in Burlington. Having a regional drop-off center with easy on and off access, in my mind, is a win for the entire county, not a win for Burlington. And so it's my hope that that the board here, certainly we can always look at Burlington and say they're the exception, they're the elephant in the room. I think this really is a win for the county, and we want to be a partner in your success.
Well said. The conference room hand is raised.
Yeah. Are we unmuted?
No, we're good.
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to make a point that even whether consolidated collection goes through or not, I think there's a serious need for bulky collection drop off, as well as tire collection drop off. I mean, that's anecdotally through my work with the landlords, with the property owners. I think there's a serious need around college move outs, around every time in general for the city of Burlington. So either way, I think as a way for people to reasonably get rid of their stuff in responsible ways, I think I could see Williston being very supportive of a drop-off center in Burlington.
Thank you, Kelton. Other questions, comments, or observations?
And Ron, I think, has a hand.
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm Ron Stoltine, alternate for Winooski. Just piggybacking on an earlier question by Bryn about range of service. I'm wondering if you have a sense, a definitive sense, if possible, of what the demand would be for full service, you know, a full range of service at this site from the community.
Yeah, so previously, pre-COVID shutdown, it was a kind of a standard drop-off center. We accepted most materials there, so it was essentially full service with some space limitations to be had. It was not, I believe, Josh, Michelle, you might know better too. It was 2 days or 3 days a week. Chicken, do you remember?
That's 3 days a week.
3 days, okay. So that tends to be kind of the standard for the facilities, with the exception of Heinsberg. That has been the one location that is always only been 1 day. So I think what I'm hearing Chapin say is that city administration would certainly want us to go back to at least that level of service, a 3-day-a-week location. Is that fair to say, Chittenden?
Yes, and I think, it really plays into the conversation with the community. As noted earlier, we need to do this in partnership with the community. I think generally we've heard anecdotally a desire to return back to 3 days. And I think once there's a better connectivity with Champlain Parkway, that further expansion of that and further use of the facility, I think becomes a much easier conversation.
Chittenden, could you say again, in kind of the ideal construction world, at what point phase 1 and phase 2 might be completed?
Yes, phase 1, the proposal is to be underway summer, fall of 2022. It would be 2 to 3 year construction season through 2024. And then the second phase being 2025 through 2027. So the full interstate connection being made in or around 2027
Okay, thank you.
and open.
So just a follow-up question to that, then I guess, Sarah, what I heard Chapin say was that construction on that initial section around the Flint Avenue would be completed in 2024. What would be your outlook for when should we decide to proceed with a Flint Avenue drop-off center? What kind of time frame would we be looking at?
Well, we certainly would want to, in my opinion, and Josh, I'd like you to step in too if you have a different one, but in my opinion, we would want to wait until it was done, that phase 1 was done, or substantially complete. So if you're looking at whether it's spring or summer of 24, I mean, I think we're looking at fiscal 24, 25 for our planning, permitting, et cetera, at the earliest. I don't know if that would jive with what you had in mind, Chapin, but I would be hesitant to put anything in our plans much before that.
I think to the extent that the CSWD board can see that the city of Burlington is interested in moving forward as a partner with you all, we would benefit from the district being willing to not rush the development. I think there's the time for community conversation is important. The time to make sure we get the permitting right is good. This is not a desire on my part to drag this out, but a desire to do it thoughtfully. And I think the general timeline that Sarah laid out is something that I think works from my standpoint.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize if you said this already. How would the square footage of the parcel relate to our other DOC spaces?
As far as the size of the build out?
Yeah.
Josh, do you have a sense for what that might look like? We've sketched out a little bit.
Sketch wise, probably about Milton or Essex. It would be one of our bigger ones, not as big as Williston, but there's acre and a quarter of usable space. I'd have to review setbacks, but that's a good size DOC for us. When I say usable space, I mean, the outside of the usable space is where our truck traffic would go. So that's actual, management zone, I think I should say. So it'll be reasonably sized. It would be medium to large.
And then as a follow-up question, I know we've had certain DOCs that the traffic lining up can interfere. How do we anticipate whether or not that would be an issue, or how would it be managed? I know this is getting into the weeds, so sorry.
Yeah,
No problem. I mean, the beauty of having our own site is that we're not necessarily constrained to, the footprint that we are given. So this would be our opportunity to really thoughtfully design that traffic flow, keeping in mind that the lease purchase agreement would provide the front portion. So the 195 Flint, the city would own that. So we're only leasing from them the 201 portion, the piece that is in the back of that 195. So we don't have the entire nearly 3 acres, as Josh said. We have about 1 1/4 usable. But that is more than enough space to really design a good flow. And we would do, I know we would do a great job. So truly mitigating traffic backing up onto the roads is critical, as we have talked about that with Richmond. We've talked about that with South Burlington. What are some of the ways that we can mitigate that traffic impact, particularly on a Saturday? So that would be, primary in any design would be that's the goal, to get people in and out safely and to mitigate that traffic impact.
Yeah, and what Sarah said, if locating it at 201, which is further back on the parcel, gives us more queuing space. So there is an elegant solution that by siting this on the backside, which, it's not a retail business that needs street frontage, that this really is the right way to go. And my wife would probably chase me out of the house if I didn't say that her solution to ending queuing on Saturdays is to be open on Sundays. There you go, Rebecca.
Well, and it's a good timing for lots of creative solutions as we enter into a work session on the VOC system. So,
yeah.
Any other questions for Chapin? We're right on time for the estimated schedule. Thank you very much, Chapin, for giving us your time tonight and for the good news and the expressions of wanting to be a great partner with CSWD. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, good. We appreciate the partnership. We know you've held on to this property for now 2 decades. I think there's interest on all sides to come to a resolution here, and I look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank you, Chapin.
thank you.
So long, Chapin.
Bye-bye.
We're now ready to move on to agenda item number 5, a discussion of the Community Cleanup Fund, which is on materials were found on page 10 of the your board packet. I just wanted to make an introductory comment that this is something that Bryn has had a deep interest in for quite some time. There was a bit of discussion, a little bit unfocused at the June 2021 board meeting. She had very much hoped that we would be bringing this to you, had brought it to you last month for discussion. We weren't ready to do that, and so we're here tonight. And I really appreciate the interest and the initiative on Bryn's part to bring this to the board. And I want to give her the courtesy of making opening comments and present her thoughts on this before we open it up to a little bit broader discussion. So,
sure, thank you. And I want to thank the staff that have been really helpful with this. In particular, Michelle and Nola have done a lot of research to compile data, to really look into the depths of this. It's not included in tonight's packet, which probably would have been helpful for frame of reference. I know that I like looking at numbers and it helps me provide an informed decision. So I think that as we move into the conversation, I believe Sarah, one of the team members, can bring up some tables and charts to reference, but apologies that that was not included in tonight's packet for you to review beforehand. I think just for a point of reference, this has gotten my attention as like, I think while low level in priority, it's just screaming opportunity to me. And an underutilized opportunity. And I think the staff have done a great deal of work over almost the last 3 decades to create a funding opportunity for municipalities, member municipalities, to access funds for projects, such as what Burlington accessed this past year to clean up space down in Sears Lane. Which was critical to being able to advance that project. So I think there are municipalities that do utilize it, and there are a number that don't. And I think as I've learned lately, just because you build it, it doesn't mean that folks will come. So that old adage, build it and they will come. I don't know that that is the case. And I think we have done, the board and the staff have done a lot of work over the years to reduce barriers as much as possible, to make it easier to access, easier to utilize, more friendly for the commissioners and towns, and we're still not seeing that uptake. So, and we can kind of get into some of the background data on that soon. So essentially what I'm attempting to propose is, given that we have a lot of historic data on funds that are allocated in the budget for the cleanup projects that go unutilized, and because of the timing of when new funding allocations would happen, basically taking the unallocated funds that have been approved in the budget and putting it towards another existing grant program. So waste reduction initiative or incentive grants, which is mentioned at the top of the memo here on page 10. So that essentially builds into the questions. I think getting into the minutia a little bit more will help, but that's my hope, is basically saying there's this funding that's approved in the budget, and given that municipalities and the timing of it, we know that municipalities aren't, they've reached their cap, that funding isn't going to be allocated. Can we redirect that? And it may require a policy change, but can we redirect that to other grants so the rest of the municipalities can access that? So that's essentially what I'm trying to propose and trying to accomplish in the most clear and straightforward way, which is just, I don't know if that has been achieved or not, but that has been the effort. So thank you. Thank you,
Bryn. Katie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I was the administrator of the Community Cleanup Fund, from 2007 to 2017. So having been on the other end of receiving project requests for 10 years for the district, I can speak a little bit to the background, not too much to the exact numbers, but I do know that we started out where it was just a community cleanup for illegal dump sites. And if there was a community at large that there was a illegal dump site that was on the side of a road, it posed an environmental hazard, communities could request funding for those types of projects. Then it extended to removal of graffiti. Then it extended into, a commissioner had a specific project that might not have been on public property, but was maybe on private property, but it was in limbo with the bank, but it was also an eyesore. Then it expanded into that. And then it expanded into the container grant program to include requests to use the community cleanup funds for container grants. So the allocations have always kind of been shifting depending on what member municipality has more or less in population. There was talk at one point to move at one point there was an excess amount. If you hit a certain amount in the fund, then you wouldn't get any more funding until you used it. And then there was a provision involved where you could request approval for using someone else's, like if like South Burlington had a couple extra thousand in their fund, Westford could request to use Williston's fund. So it got very convoluted. We put the request form online to try and make it easier for people out in the public to know that there was a way to kind of report these things. But then you get into, well, if it's on private property, you can't go on private property, and that becomes, you can't trust, there's a no trespassing situation. So the Community Cleanup Fund has been it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things, but it's bounced back and forth through different PUDs and Community Cleanup Fund. It was in the enforcement budget at one point, then the administrative budget. Anyway, I feel like there's a whole lot of work going on for not a whole lot of money. And whatever it's been used for historically in the past, I feel like if you just concentrate on that and make it for either container grants to clean up, where there's too much waste on the street, and Green Up Day too. You could even use community cleanup funds for Green Up Day expenses. So I mean, it's just been a fund for people to request to use, and we've gotten requests across the board from, can I buy t-shirts for my volunteers, to can I purchase a, rental for an excavator, to can I buy, containers for my condo complexes in the area. So just to provide a little bit of a background on where the community cleanup fund has come from and what it's kind of snowballed into. But thanks, Bryn, for bringing it back up again. I always love to talk CCUF, and that's my input.
Thank you very much, Katie, for that background. I guess I wanted to hope we have the memo in front of us, and perhaps we'll have questions about it. But I kind of like Bryn. I like numbers up to a point, but I pulled out 4 numbers that I wanted to put out on the table, and hopefully I can present them clearly. But if I'm wrong, Sarah, please jump in immediately, because I really don't want to confuse commissioners. But by my understanding, in our annual budget, we have been allocating to all the towns a total of $17,000. Some towns are allocated in the budget as low as $500. Some towns as much as $2,000. But I believe within the budget every year, $17,000 is allocated or is available.
I think it's 19, but
19?
Not more than 19.
Unused money for each town can be rolled over to a future year up to a cap of 5 times their annual allocation. So for example, the town of Underhill qualifies for an annual allocation, I believe I think it's no, I don't have it, but we'll use Westford as an example. They get $500 allocation based on population. Mm-hmm. Their fund can hold up to $2,500. If they cap out at $2,500, don't use that money, and in a new year, an additional $500 is allocated, that money just doesn't go anywhere. It's essentially returned to the general fund. That's point number 2 I want to make. The maximum fund balance, by my calculations, across all the towns is $85,000. Maybe it's a little bit higher than that.
It's about 80,000.
I'm sorry, 80?
Yeah, I want to, Nola's, Becky, if you could promote Nola to a participant, and she can chime in with the actual numbers, but it's at least 85,000.
Identified in your memo that the fund balance for the fiscal year 2021 fund balance was $79,000. So that's an indication that there's a lot of money out there, and as it's been said, it's not being used.
Yes, Nola, could you clarify, please, if we've both missed something?
If no one were to use their funds at all and everyone was maxed out, would be $95,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my point, trying to just get those numbers out on the table to make people aware of the scope of the dollars. It's not much. There's a mechanism to accumulate them, but if the money is allocated and budgeted but not used, echoing Bryn, is there not a way? Can we not have the will to find a way to redirect those dollars to a better purpose or to a good purpose? Then I think the devil gets down in the details. And at that point, well, I see, Katie, you have your hand raised, but I was going to ask Sarah if you wanted to.
I would just add another question for the group to think about, which is, what are we looking to achieve by maybe moving monies that have not been distributed due to caps? So what is the overall goal of this? And from what I understand, and I definitely want clarification if I'm mistaken, what I understand it to be is that the district has for years made a commitment to our member towns to be able to assist them with perhaps unbudgeted projects or emergency situations as part of another perk of membership within the district, to be able to help support that at the local level in a real tangible way, visible way, other than just our facilities. Here is something that CSWD is supporting in each member town at a project that is really needed and just may not be within the budget. And so if that is, and Katie's absolutely right, it has evolved quite a lot over the 20 years of the existence of the fund. So if that is what we're trying to achieve, is how can we continue to either make these dollars available, make more dollars available, get them out and in use in the community. What are the different ways that we can achieve that goal? So I just want to make sure that we're talking about what the impetus is for making a change. And I know Nola and I have talked about some, and maybe it is kind of too much in the weeds, but some accounting challenges with some of the potential changes. So I really want to make sure that we get up to the kind of the up top level of saying, well, definitely what is the goal? And if it's supporting these local efforts or something different. So maybe that would be maybe a clarifying question for Bryn or you, Paul, and then others if they want to chime in too, to say, well, what are we looking to do?
Okay. Katie, you had your hand up first, then I think Nola, then Lee.
So I've been at this table many times asking on the other side, what should we open this up to? And every time we've come to the table with this community cleanup fund question, we've opened it up to container grants, using it for green up day. This is what keeps happening when we just ask what we want to do with the money. I feel like we decided that there's a cap. And if the money's not being used, it could be. Having it there, I mean, is it a huge, I just don't think it's a huge amount of money to want to take away from the potential for towns to use it. I got a community cleanup fund request actually sent to me the other day, like through the portal. Like, it's very odd getting it on the other side, but I actually got one through the portal, and it's back and forth. But it needs to be there because people know it's there and they send it in, and it comes to me and goes to I think Janine. It's Janine.
I should be going to Nola. I want to make sure, I definitely want to clarify, the proposal is not to eliminate the community cleanup fund. I want to make sure that is very, very, very clear. So if that has not been clear, I apologize.
Okay.
We do not.
I just think that if you just keep opening it up to more, and again, with the accounting challenges, is it going to go, what fund does it come out of? Where do we reimburse it? And that was the other challenge too, is towns have to pay up front, and then the community cleanup fund reimburses the towns after the fact. So that was the other, that's the other issue too, that commissioners should be aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff, if that's not the procedure anymore, but.
No, you are correct. And that was one of the items I think Nola was going to ask about, was if we did want to make changes to the structure, keeping in mind that the monies that are in the community cleanup fund are still CSWD district dollars. They are not restricted use dollars, right? They do not, quote, belong officially to the cities and towns, meaning if CSWD were to be dissolved tomorrow, that money would remain with CSWD. We would not be cutting a check to each individual town for the money that's in that fund. So there may be, again, we haven't really had to have this part of a conversation before, so there may not be that knowledge that it's not a restricted use. It is allocated, allotted, and available, but it does not actually physically belong to Westford or South Burlington or Burlington. It is still district dollars. So if the board wanted to change that structure to make it restricted, that's a whole other part of a conversation. So I wasn't hearing that, But certainly, you know, if that's something that we wanted to look into, I would ask Nola to kind of talk through some of those conditions, but I'm not sure we want to go into the weeds that much tonight. I don't know that that's where we want to be right now, Paul.
Well, Nola had her hand up. I would just follow up on what you said, Sarah. I don't really think we need to get that deep in the weeds. And I would say, Nola, you don't need to address that particular question, but please, Nola, go ahead with what you wanted to say or ask.
I just want to be sure that that we understand that there's a difference between what's budgeted and what is the maximum allowed allocation. So in the past, we have put that value as our budget, but that's not accurate. And I spoke with our auditors for fiscal year 20, and they made it very clear that what we should actually be budgeting is the reserve balance. So I just want to be sure that everyone understands that there is a difference between what we're budgeting versus what that allocation is going to be. That doesn't change the fact that, you know, we will have that money distributed out among the towns that are not at their maximum. But I just want to be sure that when we're having this conversation, we understand that those are two separate items. The budget is separate from the potential allocation.
Right. So what we've seen in the budget all along has been the allocated amount, or the amount to be potentially allocated of 19,000. What the auditor is saying, no, you have to budget for the full liability. So if everybody used every dollar, that's the cash out. So that's what we need to be budgeting for. So that will be a difference that we'll see in the budget we develop for next fiscal year.
And that would be the difference today between the 19 that's currently been budgeted versus the 95 that theoretically could all be expensed.
Correct.
Thanks. Lee, you were next, then Bryn, and then the conference room.
Thank you. So essentially why we're here is, you know, there's allocated money that's not being spent from member communities. Is there additional outreach? I know the website's got a great site there. I was on it today, you know, cruising around, but, you know, what communities don't know that these funds are available, and how can we reach out to them? Burlington, we try to use it when we can. We use it a lot. Roadside trash is a big problem here. I'm starting to see it spread to other communities on the sides of the road. And to Katie's point, maybe some municipalities don't have it budgeted for trash. I happen to have some money for trash where I can pay for these up front and then get reimbursed later in the year. I have that ability. Some towns might not have that ability. I understand that, but is there additional outreach or community outreach we can do, whether it's CSWD or commissioners talking to their select boards or, city councils, just to, that money's there. Let's use it. I'm sure they can come up with some great projects within the public right away.
Yes and yes. Yeah, and that was one of the things I think Nola had suggested in the memo in June, was that she really wanted to make a strong effort this year in continuing to have the Community Cleanup Fund be a presence in the board packets on a regular basis, rather than just kind of towards the end of the year. What we used to do would be in April and May, remind people, hey, don't forget, you've got this amount of money. That's not enough time to put together a project in the fiscal year. So, by talking about it throughout the year, and Abby had brought this point up a couple of years ago, saying, hey, tell us what other people are doing, and give us some examples of what's happening in other communities, just to spark ideas of what we might be able to do. So we certainly can and have been increasing the awareness within the board packet. Your point, though, Lee, about, is there anything that commissioners can do? And because the projects do need to funnel through commissioners, we're not accepting projects just from the general public. They do need to come through you, so that we know that you've seen them and you're approving them. Certainly the more involved and active a commissioner is with their fund, they're going to use that fund. And we unfortunately don't have full representation of our communities. We are missing a couple of commissioners, so that has some impact. I also want to make sure too that our alternates know that, you know, you can be working with your primary, with your lead commissioner on developing projects and looking for projects. It doesn't have to be just the function of primary commissioner. So yes, and we would welcome the opportunity to help you get information into your select board packets, into their updates on a monthly basis. We can produce a little blurb saying, hey, did you know that this is available from CSWD? So that they can start to, at the select board, at the city council level, start to have those conversations and say, what can we use these funds for? It's available for a number of things. So yes, I do think there is additional outreach. To Brent's point, though, I think even when that is done, there will still be unused funds. That has just been the pattern over the years. So it's kind of a both, right? It's a yes and. It's both things.
Bryn,
Thank you.
Thanks. And this is why I think it would have been helpful to have the historical data in your packet tonight, because that gives a lot of frame of reference. The 3 pages of total CCUF spent by fiscal year, just within the last 5 fiscal years, the most communities, the most number of communities that have used it in a year over the last 5 years is 9. Half of the member communities have utilized their available funds. And of those folks of those members that are utilizing those funds, the majority are not depleting the available funds that they have. Or so in effect, yes, there will always be some funding that's approved in the budget, 19,000 or 95, depending on whether we're talking about FY21 or 22 or FY23. So I think it's not a matter of writing checks that's restricted for towns. It's saying this money is supported and approved by the board for community projects. We are saying, yes, we want to ensure that towns have access to the funds, and we want to continue the cleanup fund moving forward. So once those allocation caps are met, there will almost always be some amount that's remaining that was approved in the budget. I'm not saying it needs to, and again, getting into the weeds, but avoiding that for now, there will always be some amount that's left over. So in that event, can we utilize the funds that the board is saying, yes, let's make that available to communities? Can we do something with that rather than just have it go back into the general fund cloud and, you know, either not get used at all, or, you know, to the extent that there could be some emergency that there's no process for that's established at all, then let's say, like, let's put if there's 10,000, let's put that in the community's fund so it goes towards container grants. Or, you know, let's agree, like, we've had a problem and the staff have said that there's a problem with spending around Green Up Day. Then let's see if we all agree to say, okay, whatever's left over from the cleanup fund, then let's have staff use that towards paying Green Up Day expenses. I just want to be able to utilize those funds that we identify as a board, and that all of our municipalities go through the process of reviewing in May and June with Sarah and the team. How can we utilize that? That's the goal. That's what I'm seeking to achieve.
thank you. Well said, Bryn. Conference room.
Yep. This is Kelvin with Wilson. So two points. I'm wondering if staff could possibly add to the program updates every time money is spent and what it's spent on. Just so, again, kind of churn ideas and add that to the program. So if 9 towns are spending it a year, so we could see those updates, I feel like that would be an awesome piece of information to have. The second piece, and I'll be brief on, I agree with Lee, that if there's this money here, it'd be nice to see it being spent at the towns it's allocated to. So I wonder if there was a way we could measure the outreach team's success based on the number of towns that are going over their allocated 5-year period. I'd be wondering if we could add that to the outreach team as part of their job to go out and give out this free money, in a sense. I feel like that's a pretty good part of a job to be able to go out and do that. And I would hate to punish certain towns who don't have a current representative, or maybe have a representative that isn't as engaged to really update them. I'd hate to see that being punished. And I'd rather instead have our outreach team go in and try to bring in engagement from those towns. And while they're bringing in that engagement, push them to spend this money.
I've got a couple of observations as well. It seems to me we ought to be a bit concerned about the size of the unused money. $95,000 is a pretty good chunk of change. And if it's not being used, that means it's not being used wisely. And I wonder, and I'm not advocating any kind of slap on the wrist for any town or community that is not using it, but I wonder if there ought not to be some kind of incentive or motivation or encouragement going on to encourage towns to use the money in a timely fashion and in an appropriate fashion. One of the things that I think about is maybe there ought to be a time limit on when the money should be used, maybe 5 years, and then the money gets returned to some other purpose. I think that we obviously want to encourage our towns to do the goals that we have in mind for the entire community. That sort of thing comes to my mind.
Paul Stabler and then Bryn.
Yeah, I just want to, I have to disagree strongly with the idea that unused funds from this particular purpose are wasted in any way. They're not wasted. I mean, every program we do is important, and the money, if it goes back into the general fund, that's great. That's fine. It's used to fund other programs. That's important. So let's not say it's wasted. Now, on the other hand, I do agree that my own personal opinion here on this, where I come down, is as long as my town has the full allocation available for the fiscal year, in case something comes up that I can't predict, and it's the 11th month, I want to make sure that money is there so that we can help. But if at the end of the fiscal year, there's unused allocated funds, I'm personally fine with, like, for instance, it going to another program, another community, or for cleanup or whatever. I think after staff, and I'm sure, Sarah, you're going to do this, after hearing this discussion, I think what we're going to need is a concrete proposal in front of us, to vote on at some point. But again, I just want to dissuade anyone from thinking that if the community cleanup funds not fully utilized, that it's wasted money. It's not.
Thank you, Paul. Bryn?
Thanks. 2 points of clarification. So 2 words that have just come up in the last couple minutes are punish and wasted. So I first want to clarify that no one in any way would be punished with this, with a change of this variety. Because of the timing of when funds are allocated, all towns would be reaching their cap, or if they haven't spent down their cap, then they wouldn't be getting the money anyway. There wouldn't be a punishment. Previous boards have already said, this is your cap. If you spend it down, then we'll raise you back up, or we'll give you your allocated amount. So we know that by the end of the fiscal year, by the end of June, and then when the numbers are done and run, July. So by August, we know whether or not Winooski is going to get $1,000 or not. Have we have we used any of that fund to bring it back up to our cap or to bring it back up to the $1,000 allocation? If we're at $5,000 and at the end of the fiscal year, then we know in August, Winooski's not going to get that $1,000 by the end of August. So there's no punishment and and I feel like that is a critical component of understanding like the conversation. Because absolutely, I would never recommend that in any way. So it's a timing element. And I also want to assure that by no way am I, and I apologize if there's the perception that I'm suggesting that funds that are approved in the budget, but don't get allocated to particular towns are wasted. I don't feel that way. I feel like it's more of a optimization. So the board is saying, yes, let's allocate $19,000 for communities to use. And then saying, okay, once we reach that cap, there's going to be a remainder. So can we utilize that remainder that will be a fluctuating amount over years? And yes, there are accounting challenges with it. Should we say, let's put that towards, if there's like speaking of general fund, then say, okay, let's utilize that funds for Green Up Day expenses so that there's like a line item for it, I guess. I'm just trying to think about optimization and the ability to support communities either through saying, okay, like let's take that money and add it or add it to the container grant funds. Let's add it so we have an amount that will help defer expenses for Green Up Day from towns. I'm just trying to think creatively, trying to think out of the box. I understand that this is a 30-year program and that there's a lot of history to it. So I appreciate the depth of knowledge and the challenges that are around it.
Katie, you had your hand up, but I want to make just one comment and also say we're a little bit past our allocated time, and I think we're going to have to continue the discussion at a future meeting. I just wanted to throw out that I remember as a member of the community back when the annual tire roundup was dropped from the budget, and I don't think was well received by the towns. And I can speak from personal experience. Underhill last year did a tire roundup, used community cleanup funds, and it was fantastic. And it's a way I think that we can serve the community, serve our environment, and also do some good PR if we were able to in some way refund a tire cleanup across the county. I think it would be very well received and do a lot of good. That's my pitch. Katie?
Well, just two quick things. One, I know we always put it in the where do I chuck this guide. There's always something in there about the community cleanup fund and how to request funding. So that does go out to the community. So I do know that CSWD does that outreach. And I also wanted to just say quickly that the community cleanup fund it shouldn't be a metric to measure success of outreach. It's for something that might happen. You can't, push funding and say it's free money, use it on something that doesn't make sense. It's there as in case something happens, or if there's a solid idea that could utilize that fund. There's always a conversation with staff and the commissioners. So I just want to say that it's not staff's. It's not on staff to make sure everybody spends their community cleanup fund money, and if they don't, it's demerits to staff. It's not. It's a good benefit for the communities. It's well received. It's always a positive point in everything that we present to the member municipalities. So, and that's my wrap up for that. So thanks.
I think I'm going to say at this point we do need to move on and continue this conversation. Bryn, I really appreciate you bringing this forward and having worked on it for a long time. I hope you're not disappointed that we didn't reach a resolution tonight, but it's a good start of the conversation.
Thank you for the time and and to the board members for consideration.
Paul, I'd like to continue to work with Bryn on this and potentially bring some, to Paul Stabler's point, some proposals forward to the board for consideration.
Okay. Abby, do you have your hand up for a quick
Yeah,
comment?
I would like to offer to work with you too, because I think I agree with wholeheartedly what Katie said, that the burden shouldn't be on staff, and yet somehow board members need to be oriented more and have more of a vision and advocacy for their community. So I don't know where that training comes in. And also there's the design flaw of select boards in towns and what they think their role is and what they can hear and how creative they are and how bogged down they are. So anyway, I'd like to help brainstorm.
Thank
We're
you.
on the team, Abby. Thank you.
Other folks have an interest, just communicate directly with Sarah, please. Next item on the agenda is executive session. I'm going to propose that if we have a motion to enter executive session, that we grant commissioners maybe 2 minutes to grab a glass of water or something, so that we don't rush ourselves into executive session. We have a chance to stand up and move around. That said, do we have a motion to enter executive session?
I can read the language if you like, Paul.
Thank you, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District go into executive session to discuss the organics diversion facility, where premature general public knowledge would clearly place the district, its member municipalities, and other public bodies or persons involved at a substantial disadvantage, and to permit CSWD staff and the district attorney to be present for the executive session.
So moved. Jericho. Second. Westford.
I think we've got to move. I'm not sure who moved it and seconded it, but we clearly have that.
Leslie and Katie.
Leslie,
Leslie, Katie.
thank you. All those in favor of entering executive session, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. We will enter executive session via the link that Sarah sent separately, and we'll reconvene at 7:23. My watch says 7:21 right now, so see you there in a moment.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I'm not sure who will be joining us momentarily, but we can move on. Do we have a motion to exit the executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Bryn. Do we have a second?
Second, Westford.
Thank you, Katie. All those in favor of exiting executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will leave executive session and re-enter public session. So I'll turn it over to you again, Sarah.
Thank you. Paul, I would like to have Josh Tyler just give a brief update on the status of our tons through compost and kind of changes that we may need to make to the budget anticipated revenues for this fiscal year. So Josh, if you would share your screen, please.
Okay. Everybody, can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, this will be a general overview. This is an update on food waste management at our organic conversion facility. We typically refer to it as the ODF. So, over the last 5 years, we've identified that our ODF, the optimal amount of organics is input of 5,000 tons annually. In FY22, we budgeted for 5,376. We actually saw 5,715. And when I say SSO, that's source separated organic. Those are not packaged goods. Midwinter in 2021, Casella Waste Management brought a depackager online. The inbound source separated material that was hauled by Casella Waste Management that was destined to our organics diversion facility reduced by approximately 85% in the spring of 2021. All SSO hauled by Casella Waste Management not received by our facility is heading to their depackaging facility. That's been taking place for approximately 5 months, which is how we see the reduction in tons we anticipate for FY22. This next slide now shows you kind of what we had budgeted for in FY22 and what we are adjusting for. We had anticipated a potential outlet for a portion of our tons. So we budgeted for 4,722 tons of material coming in for FY22. With this shift, we're going to see about a 10% reduction, and we're anticipating roughly 4,250 tons coming in. Where we see a direct budget adjustment would be in our tip fee revenue, which will drop almost 25%. When looking at the material that we can sell based on the material that we're bringing in, we aren't seeing a significant reduction in that. We're actually not seeing a reduction at all. And that's based on our new process from our build out, our phase 1 build out from last year. We're starting to see efficiencies, and we're starting to see actually more of a generation of product through our process shift. So that's good news, because we don't see an adjustment for what we had anticipated in our approved budget to what we have adjusted. That's why that's at 0%. We're assuming our cost of goods sold will not change. And so the overall estimated reduction in revenue is about 9%, and I've displayed it in the bottom line. So this is just an update to inform the board that we do anticipate a reduction in inbound tons, and that's based on one of the largest hauler who brought us the bulk of our material, shifting that material to their own facility.
Thank you, Josh. And Josh, to be clear, this is a projection should nothing else change going forward. So, we're not sure what other items might happen in, the second half of the fiscal year. So this is if nothing, were to adjust beyond what the current state is, this is what we are now anticipating that the revenue would be at the OEF.
Correct. This is, as we see it playing out, if nothing changes from now until the end of this fiscal year, this is what we anticipate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem. That's some of the presentation tonight. Sarah, did any commissioners have any questions or comments on Josh's presentation? I hear none. The next item on the agenda is other business. I guess in a sense, this was other business, but are there any other business items to come before the board tonight? I see no one raising their hands, so with that, then I'd say let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, South Burlington.
Thank you.
Second, Jericho.
Thank you, Leslie. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. We are adjourned. Thank you very much,
Good night.
folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Right.